Good morning once again, and welcome to the Haven Financial Group radio show. I'm Larry Kalvik, founder and CEO of the Haven Financial Group. Feel free to give us a call at 612-504-8400 or havenfinancialgroup.com. We have tons of classes, Kim. We have our new education center that we just added on. You know, we do lots of classes. You can go to our website and see all of them, public classes, in our office classes, some really fun ones. Not just the Social Security and tax and investments and all the ones that we will continue to do, but I'll give you an example. This week we had Women, Wine, and Peace of Mind, which is a great class.
Love it.
Probate, another class coming up November 7th. Probate Explained, simple steps to keep your family out of court. Many of us would want to do that. How do you do that? We have one December 11th, just to give you kind of a flavor of what's on the menu: estate planning for parents, from diapers to diplomas and beyond. See, not just for the senior market. Right. So again, these are very well attended. Anybody can attend. They do fill up quickly. So be aware of these, as in many other classes, because we truly believe education is how we learn, and through education is how we avoid many mistakes that can be avoided.
Absolutely. Keith Russell is our guest this morning alongside Larry and me, and he is an estate attorney, and we're so glad that he could be with us today. You know, your legacy is too important to leave it by chance, and without proper assigned beneficiary designation, your hard-earned assets, well, they could either be delayed, they can be disrupted, or I think what would be the most unpleasant of all of this is unintended recipients. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of this. How frequently, Keith, do you see, people pass away and you start to dig into what they've left behind and you find out they never had any designation?
Well, part of my practice involves actually probate. So I do handle probates for a provision law firm. And so we do see it quite frequently where individuals either they just completely don't have any beneficiaries, or you can just tell maybe there was a mix up or a mistake. And then worse still would be where you have people that have unintended beneficiaries. The scenario basically where people get divorced and they have a life insurance policy and they forget to take their ex-spouse off that policy.
Sure, absolutely. So for those who don't have, and I know we're doubling back some, and we're going to, sort of cross over in some of the segments here, but for those who don't have beneficiaries, what happens?
So typically what happens when they don't have beneficiaries on, at least when I have people come to me, is they basically say, well, we went to the financial institution, went to the bank, and we knew mom or dad had an account there. Mm-hmm. And when we went and asked about it, the bank wouldn't talk to us. Bank said, come back with letters testamentary or letters of general administration, which are probate documents that you need in order to gain access to those when there's not beneficiaries. So that's typically the first indication you have a problem is no one's going to talk to you about what mom or dad had in that institution.
And let me just ask you, if you run into that problem and then you have to take it to probate, what could the timing on that be? Because, sometimes people need access to those dollars to take care of business.
Typically it's not a fast process. Typically speaking, there are different types of probate in Minnesota. And it depends on the factors and situation. I won't go into that, but sometimes you have to go in front of a judge. Sometimes you can go in front of a registrar. So sometimes there are a little faster ways to do things. But typically, I would say 30 to 45 days. Ideally, maybe you might be able to get access to those assets. Probably a lot longer than that. I just recently had a few probates in Hennepin County here in Minnesota, and it was taking about 12 weeks to see a judge. Right. So it can be quite a lengthy process.
Absolutely. It can also be an expensive process, right?
Yeah, typically it's going to be at the bare minimum, it's going to be probably $300 for a filing fee to start the probate. And then on top of what you're going to pay an attorney probably to do it. Now, some people try to do it themselves, but oftentimes things might get missed and then it slows the process down. So,
sure.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a primary and a contingent beneficiary?
So typically a primary beneficiary is going to be sort of first in line to receive benefits. Okay. And so if the primary beneficiary is deceased Or if the beneficiary says, I don't want it, and there's a term we call disclaimer where they can disclaim the asset. Typically what happens is the primary beneficiary has passed away, no longer living. At that point, you're going to look at the contingent beneficiary to see who's then going to take that asset.
Okay. All right. What's the most important thing that people need to know about beneficiary designation?
I would say that they need to understand that it is a kind of a powerful tool. And then there can be downsides to making outright beneficiaries. So, going back to what we talked about, people with chemical dependency issues, or if people are on disability benefits that are needs-based, if they're a beneficiary and they have money dropped in their lap, it could be big problems for them. That again is where an issue where maybe making a trust a beneficiary is a better solution, and let that trust manage the money for that person. The other downside too with beneficiaries is if everything goes out through beneficiary designations, beneficiaries benefit. They have no obligation to pay any expenses. So what can happen is you can have a situation where multiple children receive money through those beneficiary designations, but there's funeral costs. And so maybe one kid pays for mom's funeral expenses, then goes to the others and say to their siblings and say, hey, can I get my share? Or can you pay me back? Maybe they say, well, you know what? I think you spent too much on that funeral. I'm only going to give you this much. So there is a potential there for some family discord if there's things left to pay after the fact, because again, everyone benefits. No one has any obligation to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. Money does crazy things to people too, doesn't it?
It does.
Unfortunately it does.
It does. And Kim, this segment about beneficiaries to some may seem so elementary. Oh my goodness, who doesn't have beneficiaries?
Right.
And in all the years I've done this, I see it all the time. Even those that you would think would be current on their beneficiaries. I've used this example, but it is an example. It's a funny example, but it wouldn't have been funny had something happened. One of my clients, she's a nurse at Fairview Ridges, Southdale, has been for 41 years. And her and her husband in my office for a quarterly review. And no, it was actually before they became clients. I was looking at her 403B at her work. And I mentioned, I don't see any beneficiaries on this 403B. And mind you, 41 years as a nurse. And she goes, yeah, all these years, I just couldn't figure out who to make my beneficiary. And I looked at her, I said, isn't your husband sitting right next to you? Oh, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Had something happened, that might not have been that story probably doesn't end well. No. Or I think Keith mentioned it, ex-spouses. A gentleman, great client. I didn't even know he had this account. He brought it in and goes, yeah, I forgot about this one. And I looked at it and I said, you are the nicest guy in the world. And he goes, what are you talking about? I go, you made your ex-spouse the beneficiary. You're such a good man. And he used expletives that I would never, ever repeat. Let me say he changed the beneficiary. We helped him with it because if you're listening, if you're working with a good partner, they should be monitoring this, updating these things. Things don't stay constant. Life has challenges. Life's calendar doesn't cooperate with our calendar. This is something that you should have a partner to help you with. Not that you need a bunch of help, but to make sure that these things don't fall through the cracks, which they can. And that's part of our Haven process. And that's part of the relationship building that we build with our Haven clients. So it's really, really important.
Absolutely. So if you're looking for a partner, maybe for estate planning purposes, or you're looking for a partner for retirement planning purposes, give the folks at Haven Financial Group a call. The number 612-504-8400. Call them today. Tell them that you heard us on the radio and that you'd like to set up an appointment, come into the office and talk about what your needs might be. When we come back, gentlemen, let's talk about taxes. Boy, everybody's favorite, right, Larry? We want to talk about taxes and how that relates to estate planning. This is the Haven Financial Group Radio Show.